I sentence you to life without the possibility of parole.
The metal doors slammed shut behind DeAndre Brooks with a sound he knew he would hear in his nightmares for the rest of his life. Clang. That was it. The sound of freedom dying. The sound of everything he had built crumbling to dust in 2 seconds flat. His wrists ached from where the handcuffs had been. His ankles were shackled together so tight he could barely shuffle forward. The orange jumpsuit they had given him was too big in the shoulders and too short in the legs. It smelled like bleach and somebody else's sweat. DeAndre looked around the holding cell. Gray walls, gray floor, gray ceiling, a metal toilet with no seat, a concrete slab they called a bed. The fluorescent light overhead buzzed like an angry bee trapped in a jar. 20 years. The judge had said 20 years minimum, for crimes DeAndre did not commit. Brooks, the guard's voice cut through the buzzing. You got a visitor. DeAndre shuffled to the visitation room. His legs felt like they belonged to someone else. His heart was a drum beating too fast in his chest. He sat down in front of the glass partition and picked up the phone. On the other side of the glass sat a man in an expensive gray suit. Fresh haircut, perfect smile, eyes that looked concerned but only if you did not look too close. Only if you did not notice that the concern stopped at the surface. His brother, Terrence Brooks. You holding up, big bro? Terrence asked. His voice came through the phone smooth and calm, like he was asking about the weather. Like DeAndre was in the hospital with a broken leg instead of in federal prison facing 2 decades, DeAndre did not answer right away. His throat was swollen shut with emotion, with confusion, with the beginning of a terrible suspicion he was not ready to face yet. I did not do this, DeAndre finally said. His voice cracked on the last word. Somebody set me up. Somebody who knew everything about my business. Somebody I trusted. Terrence nodded slowly. His expression did not change, but something flickered behind his eyes, something cold, something that had been hiding there for a very long time. That's crazy, man, real crazy. Terrence leaned forward. But don't worry, your little brother's gonna hold things down while you fight this thing. Wallace Innovations is in good hands. DeAndre stared at his brother through the glass. His little brother, the baby of the family. The kid he had protected from bullies in grade school. The teenager he had kept out of gangs when all their friends were getting recruited. The young man he had given a job to when nobody else would hire him. No, you will, DeAndre heard himself say. Blood is thicker than water, right? Terrence smiled. It was the smile of a man who had already won. Nothing thicker, big bro, nothing thicker. And then DeAndre saw it. For just 1 second, maybe 2, Terrence was not sad. Terrence was not worried. Terrence was not there to comfort his wrongly accused brother. Terrence was there to make sure the job was done. The realization hit DeAndre like a punch to the gut. His breath stopped. His vision blurred. The phone nearly slipped from his fingers. Terrence stood up and straightened his jacket. Gotta go, bro. Got meetings all day. Somebody's gotta keep the ship sailing, you know. He tapped the glass with 2 fingers. Stay strong. I'll visit when I can. DeAndre watched his brother walk away. That confident stride. That easy swagger. That same walk DeAndre had taught him when they were kids playing basketball on the cracked courts of East Atlanta. His brother. His blood. The man who had put him in this cage. But how? How did DeAndre Brooks, the pride of Zone 6, the entrepreneur who had lifted his whole family out of poverty, the man everybody in Atlanta called the heart of the community, how did he end up in federal prison while his own brother smiled through the glass? Let me tell you a story that will make you look at your own dinner table sideways. A story about success that attracted envy. A story about trust that was weaponized. A story about a brother who pretended to be your biggest supporter while he sharpened the knife behind your back. This is the story of DeAndre Big Brooks, a good man who was too careful with strangers and not careful enough with the person who shared his blood. Before we dive into this journey, go ahead and hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. You do not want to miss a single part of what is about to unfold. And if you have ever had someone smile in your face while planning your downfall, type, I know this pain in the comments right now. Let me take you back to where it all started. Back when the sun was still shining on DeAndre Brooks and the storm clouds had not yet gathered, the morning sun poured through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Wallace Innovations like honey dripping from a spoon. DeAndre Brooks stood at the window on the 22nd floor of his building in downtown Atlanta and watched the city wake up below him. Cars moving like little ants, people rushing to their jobs, the whole world spinning on its axis like it was supposed to do. He tapped his left temple 3 times with his index finger. It was a habit he had picked up from his grandmother who had raised him. "When you thinking deep, baby," she used to say, "tap that temple and let the wisdom come through." Wisdom was definitely coming through this morning. Wallace Innovations had just landed the biggest contract in the company's 9-year history, a partnership with the city of Atlanta to modernize their entire transportation payment system. 5 years, $42 million. $42 million. DeAndre could still barely believe it. He was 36 years old. He had grown up in a 2-bedroom apartment in Zone 6 with 5 siblings and 1 working toilet that broke every other Tuesday. His mother worked double shifts at the Waffle House. His father was a ghost who showed up every few years just long enough to disappoint everybody before disappearing again. Now DeAndre had a corner office with a view. A house in Cascade Heights with 6 bedrooms and a pool shaped like a guitar. A beautiful wife named Simone who looked at him like he was the greatest thing God ever made. 3 children, Jalen, 12, Kayla, 9, and baby Santa, 3, who wanted for nothing, and his mother. His mother had not worked a double shift in 7 years. DeAndre had bought her a house in Stone Mountain and set up a monthly allowance that kept her comfortable. "My son did that," she told everybody who would listen. "That boy of mine, he did that." DeAndre smiled at the memory and tapped his temple again. A knock on his office door pulled him out of his thoughts. "Mr. Brooks." His assistant, a sharp young woman named Renee, poked her head through the doorway. "Your brother is here." DeAndre's smile widened. "Send him in, Renee, and hold my calls for the next hour." Nodded and disappeared. A moment later, the door swung open and Terrence Brooks walked into the office like he owned the place. Terrence was 32 years old, 4 years younger than DeAndre. He had the same dark skin and the same athletic build, but the similarities stopped there. Where DeAndre was calm and steady, Terrence was all restless energy. Where DeAndre dressed simply even though he could afford anything, Terrence wore designer clothes and a watch that cost more than some people's cars. "Big bro." Terrence spread his arms wide. "The man of the hour, the king of Atlanta, the all right, calm down." DeAndre laughed and pulled his brother into a hug. "You acting like I won the lottery." "You basically did." Terrence flopped into one of the leather chairs in front of DeAndre's desk. $42 million, for real. The whole city is talking about it. That's the goal. DeAndre sat down behind his desk. But now comes the hard part, actually doing the work. Terrence waved his hand like the work was nothing. "You got this, you always got this. That's why you're Big Brooks and I'm just little T." DeAndre's expression softened. "Don't do that, man. You know I hate when you do that." "Do what?" "Talk about yourself like you're less than. You're my right hand, T. I could not run this company without you." Terrence's smile flickered. It was so quick that DeAndre almost missed it. Almost. But something about that flicker made DeAndre pause. "Everything good with you?" DeAndre asked. "Everything's great." Terrence's smile was back in place. "Better than great. Especially now that we got this city contract. I was thinking, maybe it's time we talked about my role in the company." DeAndre leaned back in his chair. He had been expecting this conversation. Terrence had been dropping hints for months about wanting more responsibility, more money, more recognition. "I'm listening," DeAndre said. "Been here 5 years, right? 5 years I've been grinding, running the office, managing the staff, making sure everything runs smooth. I was thinking, maybe vice president, a real title, a real salary, something that shows people I'm more than just the boss's little brother." DeAndre studied his brother's face. There was something in Terrence's eyes that DeAndre could not quite read. Hunger, ambition, or was it something darker? "You know I want to take care of you," DeAndre said carefully. "And you have been doing good work, real good work, but vice president, that is a big step, T. You need to show me you are ready for that level." Terrence's jaw tightened. It was barely noticeable. Most people would have missed it entirely. But DeAndre had practically raised this boy. He knew every little tell, every crack in the facade. "I understand," Terrence said. His voice was light, but there was something underneath it, something strained. "Gotta prove myself, just like always." "It is not about proving yourself. It is about making sure you are set up to succeed." DeAndre leaned forward. "Listen, I have got some big plans for the company, expansion plans, new markets. I'm going to need someone I trust completely to help me execute them. That could be you, T. If you want it, I want it. Then show me. The city contract is a huge deal. I want you to work closely with me on it. Learn the ins and outs, the finances, the partnerships, everything. Consider it your training ground." Terrence was quiet for a moment. Then he nodded, a slow, deliberate nod. "Training ground, got it." He stood up and straightened his jacket. Well, I better get back to work. Can't be vice president if I'm sitting around chatting all day, DeAndre laughed. That is the spirit. Terrence headed for the door. He had his hand on the knob when DeAndre called out to him. Hey, T, Terrence turned. Yes, I am proud of you, you know that, right? That flicker again, that brief, unreadable expression. Then the smile returned. I know, big bro, I know. Door closed behind him. DeAndre stared at the empty doorway for a long moment. Then he tapped his temple 3 times and turned back to his computer. He had work to do. He did not have time to worry about nothing that evening. DeAndre came home to the smell of his wife's famous shrimp and grits drifting through the house like a welcome song. Simone Brooks was in the kitchen when he walked in. She was wearing her favorite apron, the one with the stains from 10 years of cooking and the words, "Kiss the Chef," printed across the front. Her natural hair was wrapped in a silk scarf, and she was humming a gospel song under her breath. The sight of her made DeAndre's shoulders relax for the first time all day. What's good, chef? He wrapped his arms around her waist from behind and kissed her neck. Boy, you better get off me before I burn these grits. Simone swatted at him with her spatula, but she was smiling. How was your day? Long. DeAndre let her go and grabbed a bottle of water from the fridge. Good, but long. Where are the kids? Jalen's at basketball practice. Kayla's at her friend's house working on some science project. And Santa is in the living room watching that cartoon about the talking puppy for the 400th time. Blaze Patrol. That's the one. I'm starting to hear that theme song in my sleep. DeAndre laughed and walked into the living room. Santa was sprawled on the carpet with her eyes glued to the television. She was 3 years old and already had her father's whole heart wrapped around her tiny finger. Daddy. She scrambled up and ran to him. He scooped her into his arms and spun her around until she squealed with laughter. How's my princess? I'm not a princess, I'm a puppy. Oh, my bad. DeAndre set her down. How's my favorite puppy? Good, Daddy. Uncle T came over today. DeAndre's smile froze. Uncle T came over. He brought Mommy flowers, pretty ones, and he stayed for lunch. Simone appeared in the doorway. Her expression was careful, measured. He dropped by around noon, she said. Said he was in the neighborhood. Brought me these really expensive-looking roses. That was nice of him. Simone's voice was non-committal. Later, after the kids were fed and bathed and tucked into bed, DeAndre and Simone sat on the back patio watching the stars come out over Atlanta. Something felt off about Terrence today, Simone said. How? I don't know. She bit her bottom lip, her tell for when she was working through something. He was being almost too nice, asking all these questions about you, about the business. About the new contract. He asked if you kept your personal accounts separate from the business ones. I said I did not know, which is true. Your business stuff is your business. DeAndre frowned. That is a weird question to ask my wife. That's what I thought, but I didn't want to make a big deal out of nothing. You sure it was nothing? Simone was quiet for a moment. Then she reached over and took DeAndre's hand. Baby, I have told you before, I trust my gut. It has never steered me wrong. And my gut is telling me something ain't right with your brother. DeAndre sighed. He had heard this before. Simone had never been Terrence's biggest fan. She said he was too smooth, too charming. She said he reminded her of those politicians on television who smiled for the cameras and stole behind closed doors. You just don't like him, DeAndre said. I don't trust him, there is a difference. Simone squeezed his hand. I know he is your brother, I know you raised him, I know you love him. But DeAndre, that man is not happy being second in command. He wants what you have, and I am scared of what he might do to get it. DeAndre wanted to argue. He wanted to defend his little brother, but the words would not come, because deep down in a place he did not like to visit, he knew his wife was right. He had seen the flicker in Terrence's eyes. He had heard the edge in his voice. He had felt something shifting between them for months now, like the ground before an earthquake. But this was his brother, his blood, the boy he had carried on his shoulders at 6 Flags, the teenager he had talked out of dropping out of school, the young man he had given a job, a salary, a future. Terrence would never hurt him. Would he? Hold up, family. I need to pause right here and ask you something important. Have you ever had that gut feeling, that little voice telling you something was wrong with someone close to you, and you ignored it? How did that turn out? Drop your answer in the comments. I want to hear your stories, and if you are rocking with DeAndre right now, hit that like button. Let me see those thumbs going up. All right, let us keep it moving. The next 3 weeks were a whirlwind. Wallace Innovations was in full preparation mode for the city contract. Meetings with transportation officials. Financial planning sessions. Late nights at the office fueled by coffee and takeout. And through it all, Terrence was right there, showing up early, Staying late, asking questions, learning everything. DeAndre was impressed, more than impressed. His little brother was finally stepping up. Finally showing the dedication DeAndre had always known was in him. One Thursday evening, they were the last two people in the office. The cleaning crew had come and gone. The city lights glittered outside the windows. DeAndre had spread financial documents across the conference table like a general planning a battle. "All right, T," DeAndre said, tapping his temple. "I want to run something by you." Terrence looked up from his laptop. "What's up?" "I have been thinking about the funding structure for the city project. We need a loan to cover the upfront costs before the city payments start coming in, probably around $2 million. I have got a meeting with Metro Bank next Tuesday." $2 million is a lot of money. But the city contract is worth $42 million over 5 years. The bank will jump at the chance to finance us. Terrence nodded slowly. "What kind of paperwork do they need?" "The usual. 3 years of tax returns, profit and loss statements, balance sheets. They will want to see our complete financial picture before they approve anything. Everything. DeAndre gestured at the papers spread across the table. Business accounts, personal accounts, the whole picture. A bank does not lend $2 million without knowing exactly who they are lending it to. Terrence was quiet for a moment. "Where do you keep all that stuff, the financial records?" "On the company server. Password protected, encrypted, the works." "You trust that system?" "With my life," DeAndre laughed. "Why, you thinking about hacking into my accounts?" It was a joke, a throwaway comment. DeAndre did not even think about it as he said it. But Terrence did not laugh. "That's real funny," Terrence said, his voice flat. "Real funny." The moment passed. DeAndre filed it away in the back of his mind and moved on to the next topic. He had too much to do to worry about his brother's odd reactions. That was his first mistake. His second mistake happened 3 nights later. DeAndre was working late again. Simone had called twice asking when he was coming home. The kids missed him. She missed him. She had made his favorite, smothered pork chops with collard greens and that cornbread that tasted like heaven. "I'm leaving in 20 minutes, DeAndre promised. "Just gotta finish this one thing." One thing was the password file for the company server. He had been meaning to update the security protocols for months, but there was never time. Tonight he was finally going to do it. He typed in the current password. A prompt appeared on the screen. "Change password." He was about to click yes when his phone rang. It was his mother. "Hey, Mama. Baby, you still at that office?" His mother's voice was warm and worried. "It is almost 10 o'clock at night." "I know, Mama, I am wrapping up now." "Well, you better wrap up faster. Your wife called me, said you've been burning the candle at both ends. You need to rest, DeAndre. Money is not worth your health." DeAndre smiled. His mother had been saying the same thing for years. Even when they were poor and struggling, she always put family before everything else. "Promise I am leaving soon," he said. "Hey, let me ask you something." "What is it, baby?" "How is T doing? You talked to him lately." His mother was quiet for a beat. When she spoke again, her voice was careful. "I talked to him yesterday. He seemed, I don't know, agitated. He said some things about the business, about you holding him back." "Holding him back? Mama, I made him my office manager. I'm training him to be vice president." "I know, baby, I know, but some people got a hole inside them that cannot be filled. No matter how much you give them, it is never enough." DeAndre did not know what to say to that. "Just be careful, DeAndre," his mother continued. "I love both my boys, you know that, but I got eyes, and what I see in Terrence lately, it worries me." After he hung up, DeAndre stared at the computer screen. The password prompt was still there, blinking patiently. He thought about his mother's words. He thought about Simone's warnings. He thought about the flicker in Terrence's eyes. Then he thought about how tired he was, how much work still needed to be done. How easy it would be to just close the laptop and go home. He closed the laptop. The password was the same as it had been for 3 years. His mother's birthday. 8,151,957. Simple. Easy to remember. Anyone who knew DeAndre well would know that password. Anyone. The raid happened on a Tuesday morning. It was career day at Jalen's middle school. DeAndre had been invited to speak about being a black entrepreneur. He had worn his best navy blue suit. He had practiced his speech in the mirror. He had brought Wall Street journals for all the kids. "Good morning, students. My name is DeAndre Brooks, and I am here to tell you that your dreams are valid. Your ideas matter. And no matter where you come from, you can build something that changes the world." The kids had been amazing. They asked smart questions about starting businesses and making money and how to handle failure. One boy raised his hand and said, Mr. Brooks, my dad is in prison. Does that mean I can't be successful like you? DeAndre had knelt down beside the boy's desk. He had looked him directly in the eyes. Your father's mistakes are not your destiny, DeAndre said. You write your own story, you understand me. The boy nodded. His eyes were wet. 20 minutes later, DeAndre was walking Jalen back to his classroom when his phone buzzed. It was Renee, his assistant. Her voice was shaking. Mr. Brooks, there are some people here. They say they need to see you right now. They are FBI agents. They have a warrant. World tilted. DeAndre grabbed the wall to steady himself. I'm on my way, he said. He did not make it to Jalen's classroom. He did not make it back to his office. The FBI agents met him in the parking lot of the middle school. 6 of them, dark suits, grim faces, hands resting on their weapons like they expected a fight. DeAndre Brooks. The lead agent was a tall white man with a gray mustache and eyes like ice. That is me. What is this about? You are under arrest for conspiracy to commit money laundering, wire fraud, and tax evasion. Agent spun him around and pulled his arms behind his back. The handcuffs clicked shut tight, too tight, the metal biting into his skin. This is a mistake, DeAndre said. His voice was steady even though his heart was hammering so hard he could feel it in his ears. I have not done anything wrong. That's what they all say, Mr. Brooks. They pushed him into the back of an unmarked car. As they pulled out of the parking lot, DeAndre looked back through the rear window. Jalen was standing at the school entrance. He had come back to say goodbye. He was watching his father being taken away in handcuffs. Their eyes met. Jalen's face crumpled. And something inside DeAndre Brooks broke that would never fully heal. The holding cell was cold and gray and smelled like every sad story that had ever passed through it. DeAndre sat on the concrete bench and tried to breathe. In through the nose, out through the mouth. The same breathing exercises Simone had taught him when work stress got too heavy. It was not working. A public defender showed up after 3 hours. A young black man with tired eyes and a coffee stain on his tie. His name was Marcus Powell. Mr. Brooks, I've been assigned to your case. I'm going to be honest with you. The evidence against you is substantial. What evidence? I did not do anything. Marcus Powell opened a folder. The FBI has bank records showing money moving from Wallace Innovations accounts to offshore shell companies. They have invoices for services that were never provided. They have your signature on at least 15 documents authorizing fraudulent transfers. Me see those signatures. Public defender handed over a piece of paper. DeAndre stared at it. His signature. There it was. The distinctive loop on the D, the sharp angle on the B, every detail exactly right. This is not my signature. Sir, 3 handwriting experts have confirmed it is a match. Then someone forged it. Someone who knows my signature. Someone who has access to my files. Marcus Powell leaned forward. Who has that kind of access, Mr. Brooks? Think carefully. DeAndre thought carefully. His assistant Renee, his accountant, his wife, and his brother Terrence. I want my wife to call my lawyer, DeAndre said. A real lawyer, Simone Harris. She is the best in Atlanta. The public defender nodded and left. Alone in the cell, DeAndre Brooks put his head in his hands. He thought about his children. He thought about his wife. He thought about his mother, and he thought about his brother. Terrence had asked about the financial records. Terrence had asked about passwords. Terrence had been at the office late at night alone with access to everything. No, it could not be. Terrence was his brother, his blood, the boy he had raised. But even as DeAndre told himself this, another voice, a quieter voice, whispered 3 words. Blood lied too. The first few weeks of DeAndre's incarceration were a blur of orange jumpsuits and bad food and sleepless nights staring at the ceiling of his cell. Simone came to visit every chance she could. She would sit on the other side of the glass with tears running down her face and try to keep her voice steady for his sake. Kids miss you, she said during one visit. Jalen is not sleeping. Kayla cries at night. Santa keeps asking when Daddy is coming home. DeAndre pressed his palm against the glass. Simone matched it with hers. The inch of plexiglass between them felt like an ocean. I am going to get out of here, DeAndre said. I promise you I did not do this. I know, baby, I know, so does your mother. She has been calling everybody she knows. She got 3 churches praying for you. DeAndre almost smiled. His mother had connections in every black church from Atlanta to Savannah. If anybody could organize a prayer army, she could. Have you talked to Terrence? Simone's expression darkened. He called once, said he was handling things at the company, said he would take care of everything while you were away. What did you tell him? I told him I did not need him to take care of everything. I told him I needed him to help find out who did this to my husband. What did he say? Simone hesitated. He said he would do his best, but DeAndre, his voice was strange, like he was reading from a script, like he was saying what he was supposed to say. DeAndre closed his eyes. The suspicion that had been growing in his chest for weeks was now a full-blown storm. "Simone, I need you to do something for me. Anything. I need you to look into Terrence, quietly, discreetly. Find out what he has been doing since I got locked up, who he has been talking to, what he has been spending money on. You think your own brother. I do not know what to think anymore, but somebody set me up. Somebody who knew my passwords, somebody who knew my signature. Somebody who had access to everything." DeAndre opened his eyes. "That is a short list, baby, a real short list." Simone was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was hard as steel. "I will find out," she said. "And DeAndre, if it is him, I will make sure he pays." While DeAndre was learning to survive behind bars, Simone Brooks was becoming a detective. She started with the company records. She was not an accountant. She was a middle school English teacher. But she was smart, and she was determined, and she had a husband to free. The first thing she noticed was the password change. Someone had logged into the Wallace Innovation server at 11:47 p.m. on a Friday night 3 weeks before the arrest. They had downloaded the complete financial records. They had accessed DeAndre's personal accounts. The login timestamp was 3 hours after DeAndre had come home for the night. She knew because she had been waiting up for him. She remembered looking at the clock when he finally walked through the door. If DeAndre was home, who was at the office, she pulled the building security footage. It took her 2 weeks and 3 different favors from people who owed her husband, but she finally got access. The video showed a man entering the office at 11:30 p.m. Tall, athletic build, designer clothes, Terrence Brooks. He had used his own keycard. He had not even tried to hide it. Why would he? DeAndre trusted him. Everyone trusted him. Simone watched her brother-in-law sit down at DeAndre's computer. She watched him type in a password. She watched him transfer files onto a USB drive disguised as a pen. She watched him destroy her family with cold, calculated precision. Then she watched something else. Something that made her blood run cold. Before Terrence left the office, he looked directly at the security camera. He knew it was there. He knew it was recording. And he smiled. Simone did not go to the police right away. She was too smart for that. Instead, she went to see her mother-in-law. Edna Brooks lived in a beautiful house in Stone Mountain that DeAndre had bought her 7 years ago. The walls were covered with family photos. DeAndre at his college graduation, DeAndre at his wedding, DeAndre holding each of his newborn children. And Terrence. Terrence was in the photos too, standing just behind DeAndre, always just behind. Simone sat at Edna's kitchen table and told her everything. The video, the passwords, the smile at the camera. Edna listened without speaking. When Simone was finished, the older woman sat very still for a very long time. "I knew something was wrong with that boy," Edna finally said. Her voice was heavy with sorrow. "I knew it since he was a child. He always wanted what DeAndre had, always. DeAndre would get a new toy and Terrence would break it. DeAndre would make a friend and Terrence would try to take them away. I thought he would grow out of it. I thought." Her voice broke. "I thought I raised him better." "You did raise him better," Simone said. "This is not your fault, Mama Edna. I could have stopped it. I should have said something. All those years I watched him simmer with jealousy and I told myself it was just sibling rivalry, normal brother stuff." Edna wiped her eyes. "But it was not normal. It was poison. And now my oldest boy is in prison because of it." Simone reached across the table and took the older woman's hands. "We are going to get DeAndre out, but I need your help." Edna looked up. In her eyes, Simone saw something shift. The grief was still there, but underneath it, a fire was starting to burn. "What do you need me to do?" "I need you to talk to Terrence. He does not know I have the security footage. He thinks he got away with it. If he talks to you, if he thinks he can brag to his mother about what he did, maybe he will say something we can use." Edna was quiet for a moment, then she nodded. "I will do it," she said. "For DeAndre." The phone call happened 2 days later. Edna called Terrence and asked him to come over for dinner. "Just the 2 of us," she said. "I want to talk about everything that is happening with your brother." Terrence showed up with flowers and a bottle of wine. Always the charmer. They ate dinner. They talked about the weather and the neighborhood gossip and everything except what was really going on. Then, after dessert, Edna poured them both a glass of sweet tea and got down to business. "Baby, I am worried about you," she said. "All this stress with DeAndre. You must be working so hard keeping the company together." Terrence shrugged. "Somebody has to do it." "That is true. That is true." Edna sipped her tea. "You know, I have always said you were just as smart as your brother, just as capable. He got all the attention, but you were the one with the real talent." Terrence's eyes lit up. This was what he had wanted to hear his whole life: validation, recognition, proof that he was not just Andre's shadow. "Thank you, Mama," he said. "That means a lot," is the truth. "And now look at you running the whole company. I bet you are doing things your way now, making the changes you always wanted to make." "Actually," Terrence said, leaning forward, "I have got some big plans, real big. Now that DeAndre is out of the picture, I can finally do what I was always meant to do." Edna kept her face calm. Inside, her heart was shattering. "What kind of plans, baby?" Terrence hesitated. For a moment, she thought he was going to shut down, but his ego was too big, too hungry. He had been waiting years for someone to see him as the smart one, the capable one, the one in charge. "Us just say," Terrence said, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper, "that I made some moves that DeAndre was too scared to make. Some financial arrangements, some offshore accounts. The FBI might have found what I wanted them to find, but they did not find everything." "What do you mean?" "I mean, Mama, that by the time DeAndre gets out of prison, if he gets out, there will not be a company left for him to come back to. It will all be mine, just like it should have been from the beginning." The words hung in the air like smoke. Edna sat very still. Her hands were trembling, but she forced them to stop. "You did this," she said. It was not a question. Terrence's expression flickered. For just a moment, the mask slipped and she saw what was underneath. The jealousy, the rage, the years of feeling small and overlooked. "I did what I had to do, Mama. DeAndre had everything: the business, the house, the wife, the kids, the respect. What did I have? Nothing. A job he gave me out of pity. A salary he could take away whenever he wanted. So you destroyed him. I took what was mine." Edna stood up. Her legs were shaking, but her voice was steady. "Out of my house. Mama, get out. Get out and do not come back until you are ready to tell the truth and make this right." Terrence's face twisted. For a second, he looked like he might argue. Then he grabbed his jacket and walked out without another word. Edna collapsed into her chair and wept. But even as she cried, she reached for her phone. Simone needed to know what she had heard. And somewhere in the background, a small recording device was still running. That night in his prison cell, DeAndre Brooks had a visitor. It was not Simone. It was not his mother. It was not even his lawyer. It was Terrence. He sat on the other side of the glass in an expensive suit, his smile as bright as the lights in the visitation room. He looked like a man without a single worry in the world. "You holding up, big bro?" DeAndre stared at his brother through the glass. For the first time, he saw him clearly, not as the baby brother he had protected. Not as the young man he had mentored, but as what he really was: a snake, a traitor, a man who had sold his own blood for money and power. "I know," DeAndre said. Terrence's smile flickered. "You know what? I know what you did. I know about the passwords. I know about the signatures. I know about the offshore accounts." The smile disappeared completely. "You don't know anything," Terrence said. His voice was cold now, all pretense gone. "You are in here and I am out there. And by the time you get out, there will not be anything left for you to come back to." "Mama knows too." Terrence froze. "She recorded your conversation, everything you said at dinner tonight, about how you made moves DeAndre was too scared to make, about how the company would be yours, about how you did what you had to do." Blood drained from Terrence's face. "You are lying." "She already gave the recording to Simone. Simone gave it to my lawyer. My lawyer gave it to the FBI." Terrence stood up. His chair scraped against the floor with a sound like a scream. "This is not over," he hissed. "You are right, it is not." DeAndre leaned forward, pressing his face close to the glass. "But we are not playing checkers anymore, little brother. We are playing chess, and I just took your queen." Terrence stormed out of the visitation room. DeAndre sat alone in his orange jumpsuit and let himself feel something he had not felt in months: hope. The recording device sat on the metal table between them like a bomb waiting to explode. Detective Aisha Thornton had been working financial crimes for 11 years, and she had never, not once, heard a confession this cold, this calculated, this cruel. She pressed play again. Terrence Brooks's voice filled the small interview room. Smooth, confident, the voice of a man who thought he had already won. "I made some moves that DeAndre was too scared to make. Some financial arrangements, some offshore accounts. The FBI might have found what I wanted them to find, but they did not find everything." A pause on the recording. Then the voice dropped lower, more intimate, the voice of a son bragging to his mother. "By the time DeAndre gets out of prison, there will not be a company left for him to come back to. It will all be mine, just like it should have been from the beginning." Detective Thornton stopped the recording. She looked across the table at Simone Brooks, who sat with her back straight and her hands folded in her lap. Simone had not cried once during the entire meeting. Her eyes were dry, but they burned with something hotter than tears. "Mrs. "Brooks," Detective Thornton said, "where did you get this recording?" "My mother-in-law, Edna Brooks, made it 2 nights ago. Terrence came to her house for dinner. He thought he was talking to his mother. He thought he was safe." Edna Brooks is willing to testify that this is her son's voice on this recording. Simone's jaw tightened. She does not want to. It is breaking her heart. But yes, she will testify. Detective Thornton leaned back in her chair. She was a solidly built woman in her late 40s with close-cropped natural hair and a small scar above her left eyebrow from a case that had gone sideways 10 years ago. She had seen a lot of things in her career. Husbands stealing from wives. Business partners betraying each other. Children robbing their own parents. But a brother framing his own blood for federal crimes and then bragging about it to their mother. That was a new level of cold. "The FBI closed their investigation," Detective Thornton said. "They got their conviction. Getting them to reopen the case based on this recording is going to be an uphill battle." "I am not asking for easy," Simone said. "I am asking for justice." Detective Thornton studied the woman across from her. Simone Brooks was a middle school English teacher. She diagrammed sentences for a living. She had never fired a gun or investigated a crime or sat in an interrogation room before today. But right now, in this moment, she looked harder than any cop Detective Thornton had ever known. "All right," Detective Thornton said, closing the file. "Let me make some calls, but I am warning you, Mrs. Brooks, this is going to take time, and your brother-in-law is not going to go down without a fight." Simone stood up. She smoothed down her yellow dress, the one she had worn on her first date with DeAndre 12 years ago. She had put it on that morning like armor. "Him fight," she said. "I have got something he does not have." "What is that?" "The truth. Let me take you back a little bit. Back to the moment when everything started to shift. Back to the discovery that changed everything. Because while Detective Thornton was listening to that recording, another discovery was happening somewhere else. Somewhere that nobody expected 3 weeks earlier. The Metropolitan Detention Center was not designed for men like DeAndre Brooks. It was designed to break people. To strip them down to nothing and rebuild them into something smaller. Something quieter. Something that would never dream again. But DeAndre refused to be broken. Every morning, he woke up at 5 a.m. and did push-ups on the cold concrete floor of his cell. Every day, he read the law books his lawyer brought him, learning everything he could about financial crimes and appeals and the justice system that had failed him. Every night, he wrote letters to his wife and his children, filling pages with words of love and hope and promises that he would come home soon. The other inmates noticed. They called him Professor Brooks because he was always reading, always studying, always working on his case. "You really think you getting out of here?" Asked a young man named Tyrell who had been in the cell next to DeAndre for 3 months. Tyrell was 22 years old with a face that still had baby fat and eyes that had already seen too much. "They got you good, man, paper trail and everything." "The paper trail is fake," DeAndre said, "and I am going to prove it." Tyrell shook his head. "That is what everybody says." "I am not everybody." This was true. DeAndre Brooks was not everybody. He was a man who had built an empire from nothing. Who had looked at a broken system and found a way to succeed anyway. Who had never failed at anything he set his mind to. He was not about to start now. But the fight was harder than he had expected. His lawyer, Simone Harris, no relation to his wife, just a coincidence of names, was one of the best defense attorneys in Atlanta. She had gotten murderers off on technicalities. She had made prosecutors cry in open court. Even she was struggling with DeAndre's case. "Evidence against you is airtight," she said during one of their meetings. "Whoever set this up knew exactly what they were doing. The signatures match. The financial transfers trace back to accounts with your name on them. The paper trail is impeccable." "It is my brother," DeAndre said. "I know it is." Knowing and proving are two different things. "Do you have any proof?" DeAndre did not have proof. Not yet, but his wife did. While DeAndre was reading law books in his cell, Simone Brooks was building a case on the outside. She had started with nothing but a bad feeling in her gut. Now she had a recording of Terrence confessing to their mother. But recordings could be challenged in court. Defense attorneys could argue that they were taken out of context, or that the voice on the tape was not actually the defendant. Simone needed more, so she started digging. The first thing she did was go back to the office of Wallace Innovations. The company was still operating, barely. Terrence had taken over as interim CEO the day after DeAndre's arrest. He had fired 3 of DeAndre's most loyal employees within the first week. He had changed the company's branding. He had even moved into DeAndre's old office, sitting behind DeAndre's old desk like a king claiming a throne. But not everyone at Wallace Innovations was loyal to Terrence. Renee Thompson, DeAndre's former assistant, still worked there. She had been demoted from executive assistant to front desk receptionist, but she had stayed. Not out of loyalty to Terrence, out of loyalty to DeAndre. I knew something was wrong the day of the arrest, Renee told Simone over coffee at a small cafe in Midtown. Terrence was too calm. Everybody else was panicking, crying, trying to figure out what happened. Terrence was just smiling, like he had won the lottery. You ever see him doing anything suspicious before the arrest? Simone asked. Renee was quiet for a moment. She stirred her coffee slowly, watching the cream swirl into the dark liquid. There was one thing, she said finally. About a week before the FBI came, I came back to the office late one night because I forgot my phone. Terrence was there, alone. He was on DeAndre's computer. He say what he was doing. He said he was finishing up some reports, but DeAndre never let anyone use his computer, not even me. I thought it was strange, but I did not want to make accusations. Do you remember what night that was? Renee pulled out her phone and scrolled through her calendar. It was a Friday. I remember because I had been at happy hour with my girls and I was a little tipsy when I came back for my phone. Friday night, 3 weeks before the arrest. The same night the security footage showed Terrence downloading the financial records. 2 witnesses now. The security footage and Renee. Simone felt something flutter in her chest. It was small, fragile, but it was their hope. Renee, would you be willing to testify about what you saw? Renee did not hesitate. Absolutely. DeAndre gave me a job when nobody else would. He paid for my mama's surgery when insurance would not cover it. That man is family. Whatever you need, I am there. Simone reached across the table and squeezed Renee's hand. Thank you. You do not know what this means. I think I do, Renee said. I think I do. But Renee was not the only person with information. There was someone else. Someone who had been closer to the crime than anyone. Someone whose testimony could either set DeAndre free or bury him forever. His name was Franklin Odell, but everybody called him Scooter. Scooter was a 57-year-old career criminal who had done time for check fraud, credit card scams, and identity theft. He was what law enforcement called a financial facilitator, a man who knew how to move money in ways that the authorities could not trace. And according to the FBI's case file, Scooter was the man who had set up the offshore accounts used in the money laundering scheme against DeAndre. Finding Scooter was not easy. The man had disappeared the day after DeAndre's arrest. His apartment in Bankhead was empty. His phone was disconnected. His known associates claimed they had not seen him in weeks. But Simone had grown up in Atlanta. She had cousins in Bankhead and aunties who knew everybody's business. It took 2 weeks of phone calls and favors and showing up at cookouts she was not invited to, but eventually she got a name and an address. Scooter was hiding out in a rundown motel off I-20 West, the kind of place where you paid in cash and nobody asked questions. Simone drove there alone on a Tuesday afternoon. She parked her car in the far corner of the lot and sat there for a long moment, staring at the door of room 14. What are you doing? She whispered to herself. You are a middle school English teacher. You diagram sentences. You do not confront criminals in cheap motels. But then she thought about DeAndre. She thought about Jalen crying himself to sleep. She thought about Kayla asking why Daddy could not come home. She thought about Santa, who was only 3 years old and did not understand why her father had disappeared. She got out of the car. The door to room 14 was covered in peeling paint and rust stains. The curtains were drawn tight. A do not disturb sign hung from the doorknob. Simone knocked 3 times. No answer. She knocked again. Harder. Mr. Odell, my name is Simone Brooks. I am DeAndre Brooks's wife. I need to talk to you. Silence. No, you are in there. The manager told me you have been here for 3 weeks. I am not leaving until you open this door. More silence. Then finally, the sound of a lock clicking open. The door cracked open 2 inches. A man's face appeared in the gap. He was older than Simone had expected, with gray stubble on his chin and deep lines around his mouth. His eyes were tired, haunted. The eyes of a man who had not slept well in a very long time. How did you find me? Scooter asked. Have family in Bankhead. Your cousin Marlene goes to church with my Auntie Patricia. Scooter closed his eyes like he was in pain. Marlene, I should have known. I come in, he hesitated. Then, with a sigh that seemed to come from the bottom of his soul, he stepped back and let her enter. The motel room was exactly what Simone had expected. Stained carpet, peeling wallpaper, a television from the 1990s that was playing a game show with the sound muted. Empty fast food containers covered every surface. Scooter sat on the edge of the bed. Simone took the only chair, a wobbly wooden thing with a torn seat cushion. "You are taking a big risk coming here," Scooter said. "If anybody sees you talking to me, it could mess up your husband's case even worse." "Do not care about the risk. I care about the truth." Scooter laughed, a short, humorless sound. "The truth? Lady, the truth is the most expensive thing in the world, and most people cannot afford it." "Can afford it? Tell me what happened." Scooter was quiet for a long moment. He stared at the muted television like it held the answers to questions he had been asking his whole life. "I have done a lot of bad things in my life," he said finally. "I am not proud of it. You grow up in Bankhead with no daddy and a mama who works 3 jobs just to keep the lights on. You learn to do what you gotta do to survive. I started running scams when I was 14. By the time I was 30, I had been in and out of prison 3 times. I am not here to judge you, Mr. Odell. I am here to save my husband." Scooter nodded slowly. "Your husband, DeAndre Brooks, I never met him, but I heard about him. Everybody in Atlanta heard about him. The man who came from nothing and built an empire. The man who gave jobs to people nobody else would hire. Then why did you help set him up?" "Because they paid me." Scooter's voice cracked. "He paid me a lot of money, more money than I had ever seen in my life. And I was tired of running, tired of being broke, tired of looking over my shoulder. They said it was just a simple job, set up some accounts, move some money, make it look like somebody else did it. I did not know it was going to send an innocent man to prison." "Is they?" Scooter looked her directly in the eyes for the first time since she had entered the room. "A man named Terrence Brooks, your husband's brother." Simone's heart stopped. Then it started again, beating twice as fast. "Can you prove that?" Scooter reached under the mattress and pulled out a manila envelope. It was thick with papers. "I have been doing this a long time," he said. "Long enough to know that when you do dirty work for rich people, you better keep receipts. Otherwise, you end up being the one who takes the fall." He handed the envelope to Simone. Her hands were shaking so hard she could barely open it. Inside were printouts of emails, text messages, wire transfer confirmations, all of them linking Terrence Brooks directly to the scheme that had framed DeAndre. There was one email in particular that made Simone's blood run cold. From Terrence Brooks to Franklin Odell subject. "Final instructions, remember, Scooter, everything has to point back to DeAndre. The accounts, the signatures, the transfers. I want the FBI to take one look at this and see an open and shut case. My brother trusts me completely. He will never see this coming. And by the time he figures it out, he will be behind bars and I will have everything that should have been mine from the beginning." Simone looked up from the papers. Tears were streaming down her face, but she did not bother to wipe them away. "Why are you giving me this?" she whispered. "Why now?" Scooter looked at the floor. His voice was barely above a whisper. "Because I got a daughter. She is 12 years old. Her name is Keisha. She lives with her mama in Savannah. I have not seen her in 3 years." His voice broke. "If somebody did to her what I helped do to your husband, I would want someone to make it right." Simone clutched the envelope to her chest like it was made of gold. "I am going to take this to the police. They are going to want to talk to you. Are you ready for that?" Scooter nodded. He looked older now than he had when she walked in. Older and more tired and somehow also lighter, like he had been carrying a weight on his shoulders for months and was finally putting it down. "I'm ready," he said. "I am ready to stop running. Family, let me pause right here and ask you something. Have you ever had someone come clean about something they did wrong, not because they got caught, but because their conscience finally caught up with them? That is what is happening with Scooter right now. Hit the like button if you believe in second chances, and drop a comment telling me what you think about his decision to come forward. Now let us keep it moving." The net is tightening around Terrence, but he is not going down without a fight with Scooter's evidence and Edna's recording. Detective Aisha Thornton finally had enough to take to her supervisor. Captain Raymond Phillips was a 25-year veteran of the Atlanta Police Department. He had seen everything: corruption scandals, high-profile murders, cases that made national headlines. But when Detective Thornton laid out the evidence against Terrence Brooks, even Captain Phillips raised his eyebrows. "You are telling me," he said slowly, "that this man framed his own brother for federal crimes, took over his company, and then bragged about it to his mother over dinner. That is exactly what I'm telling you. The FBI missed all of this during their original investigation. The FBI saw what Terrence wanted them to see: a clean paper trail leading directly to DeAndre Brooks. They did not look any further because they did not think they needed to." Captain Phillips rubbed his temples. "The FBI is not going to be happy about this. They do not like admitting they got played." I do not care about the FBI's feelings, Detective Thornton said. I care about an innocent man sitting in federal prison while the real criminal is living in his house and running his company. Captain Phillips was quiet for a moment. Then he nodded. All right, let us build the case. But I am warning you, Thornton, if we are going to take down Terrence Brooks, we need to do it by the book. Every piece of evidence needs to be rock solid. Every witness needs to be credible. This man has money and he has lawyers and he will not go down easy. Is going down, Detective Thornton said. I guarantee it. While the police were building their case, Terrence Brooks was living his best life. He had moved into DeAndre's office at Wallace Innovations. He had redecorated it in black and gold, replacing DeAndre's family photos with abstract art that cost more than most people's monthly rent. He had bought a new car, a black Mercedes-Benz with custom rims and leather interior. He had started showing up at Atlanta's most exclusive restaurants with different women on his arm every night. As far as Terrence was concerned, he had won. One afternoon, he called a meeting with the remaining employees of Wallace Innovations. About 30 people gathered in the main conference room. Many of them had worked for DeAndre since the beginning. They had stayed because they believed in the company. Because they needed their jobs. Because they did not know where else to go. Terrence stood at the head of the conference table in a three-piece suit that probably cost more than some of them made in a month. He looked out at their tired, worried faces and smiled. First of all, I want to thank everybody for sticking with us during this difficult time, he began. I know my brother's arrest was a shock to all of you. It was a shock to me too, but Wallace Innovations is bigger than one person. Few people shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Moving forward, we are going to be making some changes. Big changes. I am rebranding the company. New name, new logo, new direction. Wallace Innovations is dead. Long live Brooks Enterprises. Murmurs rippled through the room. What about our benefits? Asked a woman named Patricia who had been with the company for 8 years. Mr. DeAndre said we were getting health insurance upgrades this year. Terrence's smile tightened. We are reviewing all benefits packages. We need to make sure the company is running lean and efficient. That means some things might be adjusted. Adjusted how? I will let HR handle the details. Moving on. What about Mr. DeAndre? Asked a young man named Jamal who worked in the mailroom. Is he going to be okay? Is there anything we can do to help? The room went very quiet. Terrence's expression flickered, just for a moment. Just long enough for the people watching closely to see something ugly underneath the polished surface. My brother made his choices, Terrence said. He will have to live with the consequences. Our job is to make sure this company survives. That is what my brother would want. He did not believe a word he was saying, and somehow the people in that room knew it. After the meeting, Renee Thompson went back to her desk in the lobby. She was shaking with anger. She had watched Terrence lie to those people. She had watched him sit in DeAndre's chair and talk about DeAndre's company like it already belonged to him. She pulled out her phone and texted Simone. You were right about everything. He is worse than we thought. What do you need me to do? Simone's response came back 30 seconds later. Keep your eyes open, document everything, and be ready. Things are about to move fast. Things did move fast. 3 days after Renee sent that text, Detective Thornton got the warrant. She showed up at Wallace Innovations at 9 a.m. on a Thursday morning with 6 uniformed officers and an FBI agent who looked like he had swallowed a lemon when he found out the bureau had been manipulated by a man with a grudge and a gift for forgery. Terrence was in DeAndre's office, his feet up on DeAndre's desk, talking on DeAndre's phone to a client DeAndre had spent years cultivating. The door burst open. Terrence Brooks, Detective Thornton announced. You are under arrest for conspiracy to commit wire fraud, money laundering, obstruction of justice, and filing a false report with federal authorities. Terrence did not move. The phone slipped from his fingers and clattered onto the desk. The client on the other end was still talking, a tiny, distant voice saying, Mr. Brooks, are you there? Stand up slowly, Detective Thornton said. Put your hands where I can see them. Terrence stood up. His face was pale. His hands were trembling. But even then, even with the handcuffs clicking shut around his wrists, he tried to smile. This is a misunderstanding, he said. My brother put you up to this, did he not? DeAndre is trying to get revenge because he knows I am running this company better than he ever did. Save it for the judge, Detective Thornton said. They led him through the office, past Renee's desk, past the cubicles where his employees watched in stunned silence. Past the wall where DeAndre's mission statement was still hanging, a faded poster that read "Building Community, Creating Jobs, Changing Lives," Terrence had not bothered to take that down. He had probably stopped seeing it years ago. As they pushed him into the elevator, Terrence locked eyes with Renee. She stared back at him without blinking. "This is not over," he hissed. "It is for you," Renee said quietly. The elevator doors closed. And somewhere in the Metropolitan Detention Center, DeAndre Brooks got a phone call from his lawyer that made him fall to his knees and weep. The trial of Terrence Brooks began 6 weeks later at the Fulton County Courthouse. The media called it the brother betrayal case. News vans lined the street outside the courthouse every morning. Reporters shouted questions at anyone who walked through the doors. The story had gone national. A successful black entrepreneur framed by his own brother, a scheme so cold and calculated that it seemed like something out of a movie. But for the Brooks family, it was not a movie. It was their lives. DeAndre was released on bail pending the outcome of the trial. He walked out of the detention center on a Wednesday afternoon wearing the same navy blue suit he had been arrested in. Simone was waiting for him. So were his children. So was his mother. Sana ran to him first. She was too young to understand what had happened. She just knew her daddy was back. "Daddy, Daddy, I missed you." DeAndre scooped her into his arms and buried his face in her hair. He was crying. They were all crying. "I missed you too, Princess," he whispered. "I missed you so much." Jalen hung back. He was 12 now, old enough to understand, old enough to be angry. He had heard the whispers at school. He had seen the news reports. He knew that his uncle had tried to destroy his father. DeAndre walked over to his son and put a hand on his shoulder. "I am sorry," DeAndre said. "I am sorry you had to go through this." Jalen's face was hard. "Is Uncle T really going to prison? If there is any justice in this world, yes." "Good." The word came out sharp as a knife. "I hope he stays there forever." DeAndre wanted to tell his son that hate was not the answer, that forgiveness was the path to healing, that holding on to anger was like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die, but he could not say those words, not yet. He was still too angry himself. The trial lasted 3 weeks. The prosecution's case was overwhelming. They had the security footage from the night Terrence downloaded the files. They had Renee's testimony about seeing him on DeAndre's computer. They had Scooter's emails and text messages and wire transfer confirmations. They had the recording of Terrence confessing to his mother over dinner. And they had Edna Brooks. She took the stand on the 5th day of the trial. She was wearing a simple black dress and a hat that had belonged to her own mother. She walked to the witness stand slowly, leaning on a cane, looking every one of her 67 years. The courtroom was silent. "Mrs. Brooks," the prosecutor began, "can you tell the court what happened on the night of March 15th of this year?" Edna cleared her throat. "I invited my son Terrence to dinner, just the two of us. I wanted to talk to him about everything that was happening with DeAndre." "What did he say?" He said he had made some moves that DeAndre was too scared to make. He said the FBI found what he wanted them to find, but they did not find everything. He said by the time DeAndre got out of prison, there would not be a company left for him to come back to. He said it would all be his, just like it should have been from the beginning. "You believe him?" "I did not want to believe him. He is my son." Edna's voice cracked. "But I recorded the conversation. I had to." For DeAndre. The prosecutor played the recording for the jury. Terrence's smooth voice filled the courtroom. The same voice that had bragged to his mother about destroying his brother. When the recording ended, Edna was crying. Several members of the jury were crying too. The defense attorney tried to cross-examine her. He was a sharp young man from a major firm who had been paid a lot of money to save Terrence Brooks from prison. He tried to suggest that Edna was confused, that the recording was taken out of context, that a grieving mother could not be trusted to remember conversations accurately. Edna looked at him with eyes that had seen too much pain to be intimidated by a lawyer in an expensive suit. She said quietly, "I know my son's voice. I have been hearing it since the day he was born. I heard it when he first learned to talk. I heard it when he cried from nightmares. I heard it when he graduated from high school. And I heard it on March 15th when he told me he destroyed his own brother out of jealousy." She turned to face the jury. "You can try to confuse me. You can try to twist my words. But you cannot change what I heard. And you cannot change what is in my heart." Defense attorney sat down. He had no more questions. The jury deliberated for 2 days. On the 3rd day, they reached a verdict. DeAndre sat in the courtroom holding Simone's hand so tight that his knuckles were white. His mother sat behind him. flanked by her church friends who had been praying without ceasing since the trial began. On the other side of the aisle, the rest of the Brooks family sat in heavy silence. Terrence was brought in wearing a suit instead of a jail jumpsuit. His lawyers had advised him to look respectable. Respectable was hard to pull off when you were facing 15 years in federal prison. The judge asked the jury foreman to read the verdict. On the charge of conspiracy to commit wire fraud, we find the defendant guilty. A gasp went through the courtroom. On the charge of money laundering, we find the defendant guilty. Simone squeezed DeAndre's hand. Tears were streaming down her face. On the charge of obstruction of justice, we find the defendant guilty. Terrence's shoulders slumped. The mask was finally gone. The real Terrence was sitting there now, small and scared and completely defeated. On the charge of filing a false report with federal authorities, we find the defendant guilty. Guilty on all counts. The courtroom erupted. Reporters scrambled for their phones. Edna Brooks buried her face in her hands and sobbed. Simone wrapped her arms around DeAndre and held him like she would never let go. DeAndre did not cheer. He did not cry. He just sat there, staring at his brother, feeling something he could not put into words. The judge sentenced Terrence to 18 years in federal prison, more than what DeAndre had been facing. A poetic justice that nobody missed. As the bailiffs led Terrence away, he looked back at his family. He looked at his mother, who was weeping. He looked at his brother, who was free. "DeAndre," he called out. "DeAndre, I am sorry." DeAndre stood up. He walked to the railing that separated the courtroom gallery from the defendant's area. "Are you sorry you did it?" DeAndre asked. "Or are you sorry you got caught?" Terrence opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again, nothing came out. "That is what I thought," DeAndre said. He turned and walked away. He did not look back. The morning sun broke over Atlanta like a promise that had finally been kept. DeAndre Brooks stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of his office on the 22nd floor and watched the city wake up below him. The same view he had looked at every morning before his life fell apart. The same cars moving like little ants. The same people rushing to their jobs. The same world spinning on its axis. But DeAndre was not the same man who had stood at this window 2 years ago. That man had been innocent in ways that had nothing to do with the law. That man had believed that hard work and a good heart were enough to protect him. That man had trusted his own blood with everything he had built. That man was gone. The new DeAndre was harder, sharper. He still smiled, but the smile did not always reach his eyes anymore. He still trusted people, but he verified everything now. He still loved his brother, somewhere deep down, in a place he did not visit often, but he would never again mistake blood for loyalty. The door opened behind him. Simone walked in carrying 2 cups of coffee. She was wearing a forest green dress that made her skin glow and her eyes sparkle. She looked at her husband standing at the window and felt her heart swell with pride. "You are up early," she said, handing him a cup. DeAndre took the coffee and kissed her forehead. "Could not sleep, too much on my mind." "That is nothing new. You have been like this since the trial ended." It was true. 6 months had passed since Terrence was sentenced. 6 months of trying to rebuild. 6 months of learning to live again. The road had not been easy. When DeAndre first came home, he was not the same person who had left. Prison had changed him, not in the ways that movies showed. He was not hardened or violent or broken, but something inside him had shifted. He startled at loud noises. He had trouble sleeping in a bed that felt too soft. He sometimes went quiet in the middle of conversations, his mind drifting back to that cold, concrete cell where he had spent 6 months of his life. Simone had been patient, so patient it made DeAndre want to cry sometimes. She held him when he woke up shaking from nightmares. She sat with him in silence when he could not find the words. She reminded him every single day that he was not alone. The children had been patient too, in their own ways. Jalen was 13 now, taller and more serious than he had been before his father went away. He had taken on responsibilities that no 13-year-old should have to carry. He helped his mother with the younger kids. He kept his grades up even when his mind was heavy. He did not talk much about what happened, but DeAndre could see it in his eyes, the weight of it, the anger, the confusion. Kayla was 10 going on 30. She had become her mother's shadow during those dark months, watching everything, remembering everything. She wrote letters to her father every week while he was in prison. She still had every single one, tied together with a pink ribbon, stored in a shoebox under her bed. And Santa, sweet, innocent Santa, was 5 years old now. She did not remember much about the time her father was gone. She just knew he was back now, and that was all that mattered. She followed DeAndre around the house like a puppy, holding onto his leg, refusing to let him out of her sight. "You know what today is, right?" Simone asked, pulling DeAndre back to the present. He nodded slowly. "The grand reopening." "You ready for it?" DeAndre looked out the window one more time. The city was wide awake now, bustling and bright. Somewhere out there, his brother was sitting in a federal prison cell. Somewhere out there, his mother was probably on her knees praying. Somewhere out there, his employees were getting ready for a day that would change everything. "I have been ready for this my whole life," DeAndre said. "I just did not know it until now." Let me rewind a little bit, because the grand reopening did not just happen overnight. It was built on months of struggle and setbacks and moments when DeAndre almost gave up. The truth is, getting out of prison was only the first battle. The real war was rebuilding everything he had lost. When DeAndre first walked back into Wallace Innovations 3 days after his release, he almost walked right back out. The office was a shell of what it had been. Terrence had run the company into the ground in just 6 months. Clients had fled. Contracts had been canceled. The city of Atlanta had pulled out of their $42 million deal within weeks of DeAndre's arrest, citing reputational concerns. Worst of all, half the employees were gone. Some had been fired by Terrence for being too loyal to DeAndre. Others had quit rather than work for a man they did not trust. The ones who remained were exhausted and demoralized and scared. DeAndre stood in the middle of the empty main office and felt the weight of it all pressing down on his chest. "Mr. Brooks," Renee Thompson appeared in the doorway. She was holding a box of her belongings. She had been about to leave, not because she wanted to, but because she could not afford to stay. Terrence had cut her salary in half. She had been surviving on savings for months. "Renee," DeAndre's voice broke, "you stayed." "I did not stay for him. I stayed for you." DeAndre crossed the room and pulled her into a hug. Renee was not a hugger. She was too professional for that, but she let him hold on for a moment. "Thank you," DeAndre whispered. "Thank you for not giving up on me." "Giving up was never an option," Renee said. "Now, what is the plan?" The plan? DeAndre had been thinking about the plan for months. He had filled 3 notebooks in prison with ideas for how to rebuild. New business strategies, new partnerships, new ways to serve the community that had supported him. "The plan," DeAndre said, "is to start over from the ground up. We are going to be smaller than before, leaner. We might lose money for a while, but we are going to do it right this time. No shortcuts, no blind trust. Every person who works here will be vetted. Every contract will be reviewed. Everything will be transparent." Renee nodded. "What about the name? Terrence changed it to Brooks Enterprises." DeAndre had thought about this too. He had thought about it a lot. "We are changing it back," he said, "but not to Wallace Innovations." "What then?" DeAndre walked to the wall where the old mission statement still hung. The faded poster that read "Building Community, Creating Jobs, Changing Lives." Terrence had not taken it down. Maybe he had stopped seeing it. Maybe he never saw it at all. "We are going to call it Second Chance Solutions," DeAndre said, "because that is what this is. A second chance. Not just for me, for everybody who was affected by what happened. For the workers who lost their jobs, for the clients who lost faith, for the community that watched one of their own get torn down." Renee smiled. It was the first real smile DeAndre had seen on her face in a long time. "I like it," she said. "It sounds like hope." "That is the idea," DeAndre said. Rebuilding was harder than starting from scratch. When DeAndre had first launched Wallace Innovations 9 years ago, he had been hungry and unknown and willing to knock on every door in Atlanta until someone said yes. He had slept in his office some nights. He had worked weekends and holidays. He had eaten ramen noodles for dinner more times than he could count. But he had been young then. He had been unknown, yes, but he had also been untainted. Nobody looked at him and saw a man who had been accused of federal crimes. Nobody hesitated to shake his hand because they were not sure if he was a criminal. Now everything was different. The first month was brutal. DeAndre called every former client personally. He explained what had happened. He showed them the court documents proving his innocence. He asked for another chance. Most of them said no. "It is nothing personal, DeAndre," said one former client, a man named Harold who had been with Wallace Innovations since the beginning. "But my board of directors is not comfortable doing business with someone who was indicted by the FBI, even if you were exonerated. Harold, I was framed. The real criminal is in prison. I know, I believe you, but my board does not care about the truth. They care about optics." Optics. DeAndre learned to hate that word. Another former client was more direct. "Look, DeAndre, you are a good man, but business is business, and right now you are bad for business." DeAndre hung up the phone and sat in silence for a long time. Simone found him like that, staring at the wall, his hands limp in his lap. "Baby, talk to me," she said, kneeling in front of him. "What if I cannot do it?" DeAndre whispered. "What if I cannot rebuild? What if Terrence won after all?" Simone took his face in her hands and forced him to look at her. "Terrence did not win. Terrence is in prison for 18 years. You are here. You are free. You have your family. You have your name back. That is winning. The company? The company is just a company. It is not who you are. You are DeAndre Brooks. You are the man who came from nothing and built something beautiful. You are the man who gave jobs to people nobody else would hire. You are the man who knelt down beside a little boy at career day and told him his father's mistakes did not define his future." She leaned closer, her eyes blazing. "Do not let this break you, DeAndre. Do not let him win after all. Get up, go back out there. Fight." DeAndre looked at his wife, this woman who had never stopped believing in him, who had become a detective and a warrior and a force of nature while he sat in a prison cell, and felt something shift inside him. "All right," he said. "All right, I will." The turning point came from an unexpected place. Scooter Franklin Odell, the man who had helped Terrence set up the fraudulent accounts, the man who had come forward with the evidence that freed DeAndre, reached out. He was out on probation now, living in a halfway house in southwest Atlanta. He had testified against Terrence in exchange for a reduced sentence. The judge had given him time served and 2 years of supervised release. DeAndre had not spoken to him since the trial. He did not know if he wanted to. This man had been part of the scheme that destroyed his life. Even if he had come clean in the end, even if he had done the right thing eventually, the damage was already done. But when Scooter called and asked to meet, DeAndre said yes. Something told him he needed to hear what this man had to say. They met at a small park in the West End. Scooter was sitting on a bench near the playground, watching kids run and laugh and climb on the jungle gym. He looked different than he had in that motel room. Cleaner, healthier, the haunted look in his eyes had faded a little. "Mr. Brooks," Scooter said, standing up. "Thank you for coming." "Almost did not," DeAndre admitted. "Sit down, let us talk." They sat on the bench together, two men from completely different worlds who were bound together by the same crime. "I want to apologize," Scooter began. "I know that does not mean much. I know words cannot undo what I did. But I need you to hear it anyway." "I am listening." Scooter took a deep breath. "When Terrence came to me with this plan, I did not ask questions. I did not think about the people who would get hurt. I just saw the money. $50,000. That was more than I had made in the last 3 years combined. I told myself it was just business, just moving some papers around. Nobody gets hurt." "People did get hurt." "I know." Scooter's voice cracked. "Your wife, your kids, your mother, you. I hurt all of you, and I have to live with that." DeAndre was quiet for a long moment. He watched a little girl on the playground go down the slide, her arms in the air, her laughter ringing out like bells. "Do you have kids, Scooter?" "A daughter. Keisha, she is 12. Do you see her?" Scooter shook his head. "Her mother does not want me around, not after everything. She said I am a bad influence, and she is right. I have been a bad influence my whole life." DeAndre turned to look at the man beside him. Scooter was 57 years old. He had spent more than half his life in and out of prison. He had hurt people. He had broken laws. He had helped a jealous brother destroy an innocent man's life, but he had also come forward. He had also told the truth when telling the truth cost him everything. "What are you going to do now?" DeAndre asked. Scooter shrugged. "Try to find a job, try to stay out of trouble, try to become the kind of man my daughter would not be ashamed of." "What kind of work can you do?" "I know numbers. I am good with accounts." Ironic, right? A man who ran financial scams is actually pretty good at keeping books. I just never used my skills for anything good. DeAndre was quiet again. An idea was forming in his mind, an idea that his old self would have rejected immediately, an idea that his new self, the self that had been betrayed and broken and rebuilt, was actually considering. I am rebuilding my company, DeAndre said. New name, new mission. Part of that mission is giving second chances to people who deserve them, people who want to do better. Scooter looked up sharply. What are you saying? I am saying I need an accountant, someone who knows the tricks. Someone who can spot fraud because they used to commit it. Someone who will make sure nothing like what happened to me ever happens again. You would hire me after what I did. I am not saying I trust you. I am not saying I forgive you. But I believe in second chances. I just got one myself. Scooter's eyes filled with tears. He tried to speak, but the words would not come. Finally, he just nodded. Thank you, he whispered. Thank you, I will not let you down. Better not, DeAndre said. Because if you do, I am not the only one who will come after you. My wife is scarier than any FBI agent I have ever met. Scooter laughed, a real laugh, surprised and genuine. I believe that woman tracked me down in a motel room. She is terrifying. She is amazing, DeAndre corrected. And she is the reason I am standing here today. Hiring Scooter was controversial. When DeAndre told Simone, she stared at him like he had lost his mind. You want to hire the man who helped your brother frame you for federal crimes. He also helped free me. After he helped frame you. I know. DeAndre ran a hand over his face. I know how it sounds, but Simone, the man, knows every trick in the book. He can spot fraudulent accounts from a mile away. He can make sure our books are so clean they sparkle. Or he can rob us blind the first chance he gets. That is why I am not giving him access to the accounts. Not at first. He will work under supervision. He will prove himself. And if he messes up even once, he is gone. Simone was quiet for a long moment. She bit her bottom lip, her thinking face, the one DeAndre had fallen in love with 12 years ago. You are a better person than me, she said finally. If someone helped frame my husband, I would not hire them. I would not even speak to them. I'm not better than you. I am just trying to put something good into the world, something that breaks the cycle. Simone shook her head slowly. That is exactly what makes you better. Scooter started work the following Monday. He showed up early, dressed in a suit that was too big for him, his hands shaking with nerves. Renee gave him the side-eye for the first week. So did everyone else. Scooter did not complain. He kept his head down. He did his work. He slowly, carefully began to earn their trust. It would take months before anyone truly believed he had changed, but it was a start. Scooter was not the only person DeAndre brought back. Over the next 3 months, he slowly rebuilt his team. He called back every former employee who had been fired by Terrence. He rehired them at the same salary they had been making before. He offered back pay for the time they had missed. Most of them came back without hesitation. This company was my family, said Benny Thompson, the 63-year-old Vietnam veteran who had been DeAndre's first driver. Terrence had fired Benny 3 days after DeAndre's arrest, calling him too old and too loyal to the old boss. I have been waiting for this call since the day Mr. DeAndre got locked up. You knew I would call, DeAndre asked. I knew, Benny smiled, his weathered face crinkling. A good tree does not fall in the first storm. It bends, it sways, but it stands back up when the sun comes out, DeAndre laughed. Benny, you always got a proverb for everything. My grandmama was a wise woman. I am just the messenger. Patricia from accounting came back. Jamal from the mailroom came back. The drivers came back. The customer service team came back. One by one, the family reassembled. By the end of the 3rd month, Second Chance Solutions had 27 employees. It was less than half of what Wallace Innovations had been at its peak. But DeAndre did not care about numbers. He cared about loyalty. He cared about trust. He cared about building something that could not be torn down by one jealous person, but there was one relationship that was harder to rebuild than any business. His mother, Edna Brooks, had not been the same since the trial. She had done the right thing. She had testified against her own son. She had played the recording. She had helped free DeAndre. But doing the right thing had cost her a piece of her soul. She rarely left her house in Stone Mountain anymore. She stopped going to church. She stopped hosting her famous Sunday dinners. She stopped answering the phone most days. DeAndre went to see her every week. Sometimes she let him in. Sometimes she did not. On a rainy Saturday afternoon, 3 months after DeAndre's release, he showed up at her doorstep with a pot of her favorite collard greens that Simone had made. Mama, open up. I brought food. No answer. Mama, I am going to sit on this porch until you let me in. Even if it rains, even if it storms, I am not leaving. He waited. The rain dripped from the porch roof. A dog barked somewhere down the street. Still no answer. Then, slowly, the door creaked open. Edna stood there looking smaller than DeAndre had ever seen her. She had lost weight. Her hair, usually immaculate, was flat and uncombed. Her eyes were red from crying. "Baby," she whispered, "you should not have come." "Mama, I am going to come every week for the rest of my life. You cannot get rid of me." Edna's face crumpled. She stumbled forward and DeAndre caught her, wrapping his arms around her shaking body. "I lost my son," she sobbed. "I know he did wrong. I know he deserved to go to prison, but I lost my baby. How does a mother survive that?" DeAndre held her. He did not have answers. He did not have wisdom. He just held his mother and let her cry. "You did not lose me," he said finally. "I am right here, Mama. I am not going anywhere." Terrence made his choices. That is not on you. You raised us both right. You loved us both the same. Whatever darkness was in him, it did not come from you. Edna pulled back and looked at her son with wet, searching eyes. "Are you not angry? How are you not bitter?" DeAndre thought about the question. It was one he had asked himself many times in his prison cell. How could he not hate his brother? How could he not curse the day Terrence was born? "I was angry," DeAndre admitted. "For a long time. I am still angry some days, but anger is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. It does not hurt Terrence. It only hurts me." "And I have been hurt enough." Edna wiped her eyes. "You sound like your grandmother." "I will take that as a compliment." It was meant as one. They went inside and sat at the kitchen table. Edna heated up the collard greens and made cornbread to go with them. They ate together in silence, mother and son, two survivors of the same storm. "Have you talked to him?" DeAndre asked quietly. "Terrence," Edna's fork paused halfway to her mouth. "He writes me letters from prison." "What does he say?" "He says he is sorry. He says he is finding God. He says he wants to make things right when he gets out." Edna set her fork down. "I do not know if I believe him." "Time will tell," DeAndre said. "People can change, Mama. I have seen it. I hired a man who helped frame me. If Scooter can change, maybe Terrence can too. Would you ever forgive him?" The question hung in the air between them. DeAndre thought about all the nights he had spent in that cold cell. All the mornings he had woken up reaching for Simone and finding nothing but concrete. All the milestones he had missed, Jalen's basketball games, Kayla's science fair, Santa's first dance recital. "Do not know," he said honestly. "But I am willing to try, not for him, for me." Edna reached across the table and took his hand. "You are a good man, DeAndre Brooks, better than most, better than me." "I'm exactly who you raised me to be, Mama." Edna smiled through her tears. It was the first smile DeAndre had seen on her face in months. The day of the grand reopening arrived with a blaze of autumn sunshine. DeAndre stood at the podium in front of the new Second Chance Solutions headquarters. The building was smaller than the old Wallace Innovations office, just 2 floors instead of 22, but it was theirs, fully paid for. No loans, no debt. DeAndre had used his personal savings to fund the restart. A crowd had gathered for the ceremony. Former employees, community members, local politicians, reporters from every major news outlet in Atlanta, and in the front row, wearing a yellow dress that made her look like sunshine itself, sat Simone Brooks. Beside her were Jalen, Kayla, and Santa, dressed in their Sunday best. Beside them sat Edna Brooks, looking healthier than she had in months. Renee was there too, standing off to the side with a clipboard and her usual no-nonsense expression. Benny was there with his veteran buddies. Patricia from accounting was there with her whole church group. Scooter stood near the back, trying to be invisible, but DeAndre spotted him and nodded. This was his family. Not just the ones who shared his blood. The ones who had stood by him when the whole world called him a criminal. DeAndre tapped the microphone. The crowd quieted. "Good morning, everybody. My name is DeAndre Brooks. Some of you know me. Some of you have only heard the headlines. For those who do not know the full story, let me give you the short version." He paused, looked out at the faces in the crowd. 2 years ago, I was arrested for crimes I did not commit. I spent 6 months in federal prison. I lost my company, my reputation, and almost my family. The person who set me up was someone I trusted completely. Someone I had protected my whole life. Someone who shared my blood. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Everyone knew who he was talking about. But that is not the end of the story. DeAndre's voice grew stronger. Because while I was sitting in that cell, my wife was out here fighting for me. My mother was gathering evidence against her own son. My employees were holding on even when they had nothing to hold on to. My community was praying for me even when the news called me a criminal. He looked directly at Simone. She was crying. He was crying too. I learned something in prison. I learned that success does not protect you from betrayal. I learned that hard work does not make you immune to jealousy. I learned that sometimes the people closest to you are the ones you need to watch the most." He paused. "But I also learned something else. I learned that your past does not define your future. I learned that setbacks are not the same as endings. I learned that when you fall, the only thing that matters is whether you get back up." He gestured at the building behind him. "This is not just a company. This is proof that you can survive the worst thing that has ever happened to you and come out stronger on the other side. Second Chance Solutions is not just about technology or transportation systems. It is about exactly what the name says, second chances." He looked at Scooter in the back of the crowd. "People who have made mistakes and want to do better. For people who have been counted out and want back in. For people who have been betrayed and are still learning to trust again." He looked at his mother. "People who have lost children to their own demons. For people who have had to choose between two sons and made the right choice even when it broke their hearts." He looked at his wife. "People who never stopped believing, who fought when I could not fight, who became warriors when they had never held a weapon before." He looked at his children. "For the next generation, so they know that no matter what happens, no matter who betrays them, they can always rise again." Crowd erupted in applause. Simone stood up and clapped so hard her hands turned red. Edna was weeping openly. Benny was wiping his eyes with a handkerchief. Even Renee, professional Renee, was dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. DeAndre stepped back from the podium. He was done with speeches. He was ready to work the reception after the ceremony was held in the main conference room of the new building. People mingled and laughed and ate and shared stories. The mood was light, hopeful. The way a family reunion feels when the family has been through a war and finally made it to the other side. DeAndre was standing by the window, talking to Benny, when his phone buzzed, a text message from an unknown number. He almost deleted it without reading. He had been getting hate mail and threats ever since the trial. Some people thought he had framed Terrence. Some people thought he should have stayed in prison. Some people were just angry at the world and looking for someone to blame. But something made him open this message. "DeAndre, this is Terrence. They let me have phone privileges for good behavior. I know you probably do not want to hear from me. I know I do not deserve your time, but I need to say something. I am sorry. I know that word does not fix anything. I know it cannot give you back the time you lost, but I am sorry, truly. For the first time in my life, I understand what I did and I am sick about it. If you never speak to me again, I understand, but I needed you to know." DeAndre stared at the message for a long time. "What is it?" Simone asked, appearing at his side. He handed her the phone. She read the message and her expression hardened. "You are not actually thinking about responding, are you?" "I do not know. DeAndre, he destroyed your life. He smiled while you were being arrested. He took over your company and bragged about it to your own mother. He does not get to say sorry and make it all go away." "I know." DeAndre put the phone in his pocket. "But Simone, if I believe in second chances, really believe in them, then I have to believe in them for everybody, even him." Simone's jaw tightened. "There is a difference between a second chance and being a fool." "There? Or is that just something we tell ourselves to justify holding on to our anger?" Simone did not have an answer for that. DeAndre pulled out his phone and typed a response. His fingers were shaking, but his mind was clear. "Terrence, I got your message. I am not ready to forgive you yet. I do not know if I ever will be, but I hear you. And I hope you really are changing. Not for me, for yourself, and for Mama. She still loves you even though it breaks her every day. Do not waste this chance like you wasted everything else." DeAndre, he hit send before he could change his mind. Simone read over his shoulder. When she looked up, her eyes were wet. "You are a better person than me," she said quietly. "No," DeAndre said. "I am just tired of carrying the weight." 6 months passed. Second Chance Solutions grew slowly but steadily. They landed a small contract with a local hospital chain. Then a slightly bigger one with a shipping company. Then an even bigger one with the city of Atlanta. Not $42 million this time, but $2 million for a pilot program that could lead to more. DeAndre was careful now. Every contract was reviewed by 3 different lawyers. Every financial transaction was tracked by Scooter and verified by an outside auditor. Every employee had to pass background checks and reference checks and a gut check from DeAndre himself. He trusted people. But he verified everything. It was not the same as before. It was not as easy or as free, but it was safer. And safety, DeAndre had learned, was its own kind of peace. One evening, after everyone had gone home, DeAndre sat alone in his office. On his desk was a photograph he had not looked at in years. Two little boys on the porch of their childhood home in Zone 6. The older one had his arm around the younger one's shoulders. They were both laughing. DeAndre picked up the photograph and studied the younger boy's face. Terrence, age 8, before the jealousy took root, before the bitterness consumed him, before he became a man who could smile at his brother while planning his destruction. What had happened to that little boy, DeAndre did not know. Maybe he never would. Some questions did not have answers. Some wounds never fully healed, but he was still here. He was still standing. He had survived the worst thing his own brother could throw at him and come out the other side. Not the same, not unbroken, but still here, still fighting. Still believing that people could change, he set the photograph down and looked out the window. The sun was setting over Atlanta, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold and pink. It was beautiful. It was hopeful. His phone buzzed, a text from Simone. "Coming home soon? I made your favorite, shrimp and grits. Kids want to see you before bed." DeAndre smiled. He typed back, "On my way, I love you. I love you too, always." He stood up, grabbed his jacket, and headed for the door. He paused at the photograph one more time. Two little boys on a porch, laughing, brothers. "I forgive you," DeAndre whispered. "Not for you, for me, so I can let this go and live my life." He turned off the light and walked out. Family, this is the end of DeAndre's journey, but it might be the beginning of something for you. If this story spoke to you, if you have been carrying the weight of a betrayal or holding onto anger that is eating you alive, maybe it is time to put it down. Not for the person who hurt you, for yourself, so you can be free. Share this story with someone who needs to hear it. And make sure you are subscribed with notifications turned on so you never miss another powerful story of family, betrayal, and the strength it takes to overcome. Here is what this story teaches us, family. Success attracts many things: admiration, respect, opportunity, but it also attracts envy. And envy, when it lives in the heart of someone close to you, is the most dangerous poison of all. DeAndre Brooks did everything right. He worked hard. He stayed humble. He lifted up the people around him. He loved his family fiercely and trusted them completely. And it was that trust that almost destroyed him. Not because trust is bad. Trust is necessary. You cannot build relationships or businesses or communities without it. But trust without verification is just hope wearing a different name. And hope, by itself, will not protect you from the people who smile in your face while reaching for a knife behind your back. So be careful, family. Be wise. Love fiercely, but pay attention. Trust people, but watch their actions more than you listen to their words. And if someone in your circle is always standing in your shadow, always smiling but never quite reaching their eyes, ask yourself why. Not everybody who shares your blood shares your vision. Not everybody who calls you family will treat you like family. But also remember this: the same story that warns you about betrayal also shows you something else. It shows you that resilience is real, that you can survive the worst thing that happens to you, that you can lose everything and rebuild it, that you can be knocked down by your own brother and still stand back up. DeAndre Brooks survived because he had people who never stopped believing in him: his wife, his mother, his employees, his community. Be that person for somebody, and make sure you have those people in your corner too. Because the storms are going to come, the betrayals are going to happen, the people you love are going to disappoint you sometimes. But the sun also rises, the wound also heals, the second chance also comes. And when it does, you better be ready to take it. If you made it to the end of this story, you are part of this family now. Drop a comment and let me know what this story meant to you. Share it with someone who needs to hear it, and I will see you in the next one.